Now, as a result of this huge, widespread protests in at least 3 or 4 states, the government has been forced to firefight. It has issued statements, it has issued information about trying to bust some of the myths that are being spread and that are being amplified by opposition leaders, but are also spreading on WhatsApp groups, perhaps fueling some of these protests. There may be some misapprehensions and misinterpretations as well. One of the biggest myths that has come in so far is that the future of Agniveers under the Agnipath scheme will not be secure. The government is countering this with facts, saying Agniveers will get priority recruitment in central armed police forces and state polices. So their future is far from insecure. The second big myth as part of the they will get a financial package and a bank loan scheme. They will be given class 12 equivalent certificate. Avenues will be open in other sectors as well. So their future is definitely not insecure, is the myth that has been busted. The second myth, that the opportunities for youth will actually decrease as a result of this. The fact is, opportunities to serve in the armed forces will actually increase. The recruitment will be, in terms of numbers, triple the current recruitment because there is a regular turnover. The third big myth is that regimental bonding ethos, the whole paltan ki izzat will be affected as a result of this. There won't be any loyalty. The government says there is no change in the regimental system at all. The best of Agniveers will be selected to boost unit cohesiveness, is what the government contends. The fourth big myth is effectiveness of the armed forces will be harmed because you have young persons in the military for only 4 years or a little longer than that. Fact, short-term enlistment system already exists in most countries without affecting the capabilities and potency of the armed forces. Agniveers in the first year will make up 3%, only 3% of the armed forces. Agniveer performance is to be tested after 4 years for reinduction. So about a quarter of them will be reinducted. The next big myth is that 21-year-olds are immature and unreliable for the army. Can you really rely on guys who are just into adulthood? Well, most armies across the world depend on youth. They do depend on youth. The Indian Army is also looking for a younger profile. The scheme will bring in a mix of 50-50 mix of youngsters and experienced ranks as a result of Agnipath. The next big myth is that Agniveers will be a danger to society, could join terrorist groups after they leave because, they've been trained in weaponry and things like that, so it will lead to a militarized society. The government contends the ethos and values of the Indian Armed Forces are very strong. You can't break that spirit so easily. Youngsters will remain committed to the country because Agnipath puts them through the military, which instills a sense of national love, desh prem, patriotism. Many retire from the forces with skills. No instances so far of any of these ex-servicemen joining anti-national forces. There may always be bad apples, but definitely not something to be worried about. Next big myth, no consultation with ex-officers. There has been this view that this has been forced down on the military without any real, legwork, taking everyone on board, briefing ex-servicemen officers and groups. Armed Forces officers were consulted, in the consultative process. The proposal was framed by the Department of Military Affairs. Many ex-officers have recognized the scheme's advantages. There are many, let's face it, there are many who question the efficacy, the propriety and the long-term implications of Agnipath. But for every officer who questions it, there are some who say this is a radical reform that is in the right direction. There are certain caveats to each of these.